The Ancient Guardian. Captain Trent Russell gazed through the viewport at Earth growing smaller in the distance. His ship, the Relic, an orbital defense station that had protected humanity for decades, was being sent on its final mission. The Galactic Council had ordered decommissioning of all military vessels as part of the peace treaty with the Zentari Imperium. Russell knew the politicians were fools. "Captain, long-range sensors detect multiple vessels on approach," said Lieutenant Kate Davis, her eyes fixed on the scanner. Zentari signature confirmed. Russell nodded grimly. So they couldn't even wait until we reached the salvage yard. He watched as the alien ships appeared on the main display. Sleek, predatory vessels, with their distinctive blue propulsion trails. They're after our technology. The Relic was old by current standards, but it contained innovations that humans had carefully kept secret during the last war. The Zentari had always underestimated human engineering, focusing instead on their biological advantages and numerical superiority. "All hands, prepare for defensive measures," Russell announced over the ship-wide comm. Crew members rushed to their stations, but he knew they were hopelessly outnumbered. The Relic was operating with skeleton crew, most weapon systems already disconnected. "Sir, they're hailing us," Davis reported. The screen flickered to life, revealing the scaled face of Admiral Vexcall. His reptilian features formed what passed for a smile in his species. "Captain Russell, what a fortuitous encounter. Your vessel appears to be experiencing difficulty. Perhaps we can offer assistance." Russell maintained a neutral expression. "Admiral, we require no assistance. We're on a scheduled course to decommissioning as per treaty regulations." Vexcall's inner eyelids blinked slowly. "Of course. However, our scans indicate your ship is experiencing power fluctuations. For safety reasons, we insist on boarding and inspecting." "That won't be necessary," Russell began, but the transmission cut abruptly. "They're surrounding us, sir," Davis reported. "Multiple boarding craft detected." Russell exchanged looks with his executive officer, Commander Gary Powell. They had planned for this possibility but hoped it wouldn't come to pass. "Initiate protocol sleeping giant," Russell ordered quietly. Powell nodded and entered his command codes into the console. "ATLAS, execute dormancy protocol Alpha 9. The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately. "Acknowledged, Commander. Initiating preservation protocols. All crew must evacuate within 15 minutes. Core systems will appear non-functional but remain operational in monitoring state." The bridge crew worked frantically, destroying sensitive documents and preparing escape pods. The ship's lights dimmed as ATLAS began shutting down visible systems while secretly maintaining essential functions. "They're breaching the outer hull, sir," Davis reported as alarms sounded. Russell addressed his crew one final time. "Everyone to escape pods. Remember your training. The Relic may fall today, but she'll rise again when humanity needs her most." As the crew evacuated, Powell remained at his station, finishing the dormancy sequence. "ATLAS, maintain covered operations. Record all activities aboard. Await activation code Phoenix Rising from authorized personnel." Command accepted. The AI responded, its voice already fading as it reduced power consumption. Powell sent one last message to Earth Fleet Command, heavily encrypted. "The Eagle sleeps but watches. Remember Protocol Phoenix." Minutes later, Zentari soldiers stormed the empty bridge, finding only powered-down consoles and emergency lighting. In the docking bay, Admiral Vexcall surveyed the abandoned vessel with contempt. "Such primitive technology," he sneered to his chief scientist. "Look at these archaic control systems. No wonder the humans surrendered so easily." The scientist nodded, examining a panel with curiosity. "Their evacuation was hasty. We may find valuable intelligence before we dismantle this relic." As the Zentari began their inspection, deep within the ship's core, Atlas continued silent operations, recording every word, scanning every intruder, and waiting for the day humans would return to wake the sleeping giant. The Zentari had no idea that beneath the appearance of a powerless, outdated vessel, the most advanced weapons system humanity had ever created was simply biding its time. Lieutenant Olivia Martinez stared at the blinking light on her console, convinced she must be seeing things. She refreshed the scan, and there it was again, a faint transponder signal that shouldn't exist. "This can't be right," she muttered, adjusting the sensitivity of the Fleet Archives detection array. The signal persisted, growing slightly stronger as she fine-tuned the receivers. Martinez had been working in the dusty archives for 3 years, cataloging old military equipment and occasionally tracking down spare parts for museum displays. Nothing exciting ever happened here, until today. She cross-referenced the signal pattern with the database. The computer beeped confirmation, displaying a classification that made her breath catch. Defense Station 117. Designation: Relic. Martinez hit the comm button. "Admiral Blackwood." "Sir, I need you to come to Archives immediately." 20 minutes later, Admiral John Blackwood stood behind Martinez, his weathered face illuminated by the console's blue glow. At 62, he was one of the few high-ranking officers who had actually served in the war with the Zentari. "You're certain?" he asked, his voice tense. "Yes, sir. The signature is unmistakable. It's Relic." Martinez pulled up the historical file. The ship was supposed to be decommissioned and scrapped 75 years ago. Captain Russell filed final departure reports, but the ship never reached the salvage yard. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "I remember. The official story was that it suffered catastrophic drive failure and was lost. Very convenient for the Zentari." "Sir, the peace treaty was still fresh. The politicians didn't want to risk conflict by accusing the Zentari of piracy." Blackwood studied the signal source coordinates. "Now we know what really happened." Martinez scrolled through more data. "The signal is coming from the Viridian sector. That's deep in Zentari territory. And it just started broadcasting now. After 75 years. Blackwood's voice carried a hint of suspicion. "Not exactly, sir. The signal is extremely weak, operating on an old emergency channel. We only detected it because I was calibrating the long-range scanners for the museum restoration project." Martinez hesitated. "Sir, do you think someone activated it deliberately?" Blackwood didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up historical records of Relic's service. The screen filled with images of the massive defense station, protecting human colonies during the bloodiest days of the war. "Relic wasn't just any ship, Lieutenant. It was our most advanced weapons platform. When the war ended, many believed we should have kept it operational as a deterrent." He sighed heavily. "I was there when it was commissioned. The technology aboard was decades ahead of anything else we had." "The Zentari must have captured it," Martinez said. "But why keep it? Why not just strip it for technology?" "Perhaps they couldn't." A faint smile crossed Blackwood's face. "Captain Russell was resourceful. If he suspected an ambush, he would have taken precautions." Blackwood opened a secure channel to Fleet Command. "This is Admiral Blackwood. Convene the Security Council immediately. Priority Alpha." 3 hours later, in a heavily shielded conference room, Earth's military leadership reviewed Martinez's findings. The debate was heated. "We should demand its return through diplomatic channels," argued the Foreign Secretary. "The Zentari will deny everything," countered General Willis. "They'll dismantle it before we can prove anything." Blackwood cleared his throat. "There's another option. If Relic's transponder is active, other systems might be operational too. Protocol Phoenix was designed for exactly this scenario." "Phoenix?" The defense minister frowned. "That program was discontinued." "Officially, yes." Blackwood slid a data chip across the table. "Unofficially, we kept certain contingencies in place." The room fell silent as understanding dawned. A covert mission to reactivate a legendary warship deep in enemy territory was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But if successful, "Prepare a team," the defense minister finally ordered. The Zentari have laughed at our outdated technology for too long. It's time they learned what a human relic can do. Frank Miller pressed his body against the cold metal wall, hardly daring to breathe as a Zentari patrol passed just meters away. The infiltration team had been aboard the space station for 6 hours, making their way closer to where the aliens had docked Relic. Each step carried the risk of discovery. "Clear," whispered Samantha Moore, the team's tactical officer. Her enhanced vision implants allowed her to see heat signatures through walls. 2 minutes until next patrol. Miller nodded and motioned the 4-person team forward. They wore adaptive camouflage suits that bent light around them, not perfect invisibility, but enough to fool casual observers. The Zentari station hummed with activity, scientists and engineers working in shifts to dismantle the human warship piece by piece. "They're taking her apart," Miller said through clenched teeth as they reached an observation window. Below them spread the vast hangar where Relic floated, surrounded by scaffolding. Zentari workers swarmed over its hull, removing panels and extracting components. "Focus on the mission," reminded Alex Foster, their communications specialist. "We have 18 hours before extraction." The team continued through maintenance tunnels until they reached the umbilical connecting the station to Relic. Security was lighter here. The Zentari believed the ship completely dead, presenting no threat. Once aboard Relic, Miller felt a strange sense of homecoming despite never having served on this vessel. Every human military officer knew the legends of this ship, its impossible victories against overwhelming odds during the war. "Engineering deck first," Moore directed. "If any systems are salvageable, we need power." They moved through darkened corridors, occasionally freezing as Zentari research teams passed by. The aliens had installed their own lighting, crude cables snaking along human-designed hallways. In main engineering, Miller was relieved to find the core reactor chamber sealed and apparently untouched. The Zentari had been working methodically from the outer hull inward, not yet reaching the heart of the ship. "They're being cautious," Foster observed, "afraid of booby traps." "Captain Russell gave them good reason to worry," Miller replied, recalling the historical accounts of the captain's final stand. Moore approached the main engineering console and placed her palm against it. Nothing happened. "It needs authorization," she muttered. "I'm not in the database." Miller pulled out a specialized device, a quantum key generator containing credentials from Admiral Blackwood himself. He connected it to the console's maintenance board and activated it. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a soft blue light began to pulse beneath the dead controls. "It's accepting the override," Foster whispered excitedly. A moment later, text appeared on the screen. "Atlas System Recovery INITIATE. Voice authorization required." Miller leaned close to the console, Phoenix rising. The ship remained dark and silent around them, but the console displayed, "Voiced PTRN XCCPTID. Commencing stage RDA. Hone. It's working," Moore breathed. "The dormancy protocol is disengaging." "How long?" Miller asked. "Hours, maybe days for full capacity. The AI is being cautious, bringing systems online in a way the Zentari won't notice immediately." A soft vibration began beneath their feet, so subtle it might have been imagination. Deep in the ship's core, power began to flow through long dormant conduits. "We need to place the relay beacons," Foster said. "Once ATLAS is fully online, we'll need secure communication." As they worked, Miller noticed something odd. The ship's internal sensors were tracking the Zentari movements, cataloging their activities. Atlas had never truly been asleep. It had been watching, learning, analyzing enemy patterns for 75 years. "It's been waiting all this time," he realized with awe. A sudden alarm blared from the station. The team froze. "They've detected the power surge," Moore said. "They know something's happening." On the console, a message appeared. "Hostile forces, DTTTD, initiating defense protocols." Miller smiled grimly. Looks like our timetable just accelerated. Throughout the ship, dormant systems began to awaken. In the Zentari Command Center, confused officers stared at readings from the supposedly dead relic as it stirred to life. The hunt was about to become the hunted. Captain Lisa Wright watched the chaos unfold through the stealth vessel's sensors, positioned just outside the Zentari station's detection range. Her ship monitored the infiltration team's progress. What had begun as a careful covert operation was quickly turning into something else entirely. "Status report," she demanded. "Miller's team has triggered Relic's reactivation sequence," replied her second-in-command. "But Zentari security detected the power surge. They've sounded general alarms across the station." Wright frowned. The mission parameters were clear. Get in, assess Relic's condition, plant communication relays, and get out. Full reactivation was supposed to come later, after careful planning. But now events were accelerating beyond control. "Can we extract them?" she asked. "Negative. Station shields are up. No ships can approach or leave." Inside the station, Admiral Vexcall stormed onto the command deck, his scales flushed dark green with anger. "What is happening?" he demanded. A nervous officer pointed to the displays. "Sir, the human vessel is showing energy readings. Systems are coming online that we didn't even know existed." "Impossible," Vexcall snarled. "Your team certified it was nothing but outdated technology. A museum piece." "Sir, we've detected human intruders aboard. Security teams are in pursuit." On Relic, Frank Miller and his team raced through increasingly bright corridors. Emergency lighting had activated, bathing everything in a soft red glow. "Atlas, status report," Miller gasped as they took cover in a maintenance shaft. A calm voice responded through their comm units. "Primary systems initializing. Reactor at 17% capacity and rising. Weapons systems require manual authorization. 73 Zentari life signs detected aboard." "Can you seal sections to slow them down?" asked Moore. "Affirmative. Implementing containment protocols." Throughout the ship, doors suddenly slammed shut, trapping Zentari research teams in isolated compartments. Security forces found their progress blocked by barriers that hadn't functioned in decades. Admiral Vexcall watched in growing horror as his people were systematically cut off from each other. "The ship is fighting back," whispered his science officer. "It's a machine," Vexcall roared. "Machines don't fight. Order the cruisers to open fire. Destroy this worthless relic before." An aide interrupted. "Sir, our teams are still aboard." "Unfortunate casualties," Vexcall replied coldly. "The humans cannot be allowed to reclaim this technology." Outside, 3 Zentari cruisers moved into position, charging weapons. From her hidden position, Captain Wright watched helplessly. "They're going to fire on their own station," she realized. "Alert Miller's team." On Relic, the infiltration team had reached the bridge. Dust covered the command chairs and consoles, undisturbed for 75 years. "Atlas, external sensors," Miller asked, brushing off the captain's chair. 3 Zentari vessels preparing to fire. The AI responded. Estimated time to impact, 40 seconds. Miller exchanged looks with his team. They hadn't expected to take command, but now there was no choice. "Bring defensive systems online. Authorization code Echo 7 Tango. Unable to comply. Weapons systems require captain's authorization." Miller hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. "Atlas, emergency protocol. Field promotion authorization. Designate Frank Miller as acting captain under Regulation 17B. A pause, then. Analyzing service record. Promotion authorized under emergency conditions. Welcome, Captain Miller." Across the ship, systems that had remained dormant even through the reactivation process suddenly surged to life. Shield generators hummed. Weapons platforms emerged from hidden compartments in the hull, startling the Zentari scientists who had failed to discover them. "Shields at 63% and rising," reported Moore, taking the tactical station. We might survive their first volley. The first Zentari cruiser fired, its energy beam lancing toward Relic's hull. But instead of destruction, the beam struck an invisible barrier that flared brilliant blue on impact. The shield held. On the Zentari command deck, Admiral Vexcall's jaw dropped in stunned disbelief. "That's impossible," he whispered as the supposedly dead warship began to glow with power, its engines rumbling to life for the first time in 3/4 of a century. The bridge of Relic hummed with increasing energy as systems continued to activate. Status displays flickered to life around Miller and his team, revealing the ship's awakening capabilities. Shields holding at 78%. More reported from the tactical station. Zentari cruisers adjusting position for another attack run. Miller studied the command interface as it updated in real time. Despite decades of dormancy, the ship responded eagerly to his inputs, like an old warhorse sensing battle. "Atlas, what offensive capabilities are currently available?" he asked. "Primary weapon systems at 52% capacity." The AI responded. "Point defense grid fully operational. Pulse cannons charging. Missile bays compromised by Zentari exploration teams." Outside, the Zentari fleet had grown to 7 vessels, forming a containment pattern around Relic and the station. "They're coordinating their attack," said Peter Daniels, who had taken the navigation console. "Targeting solutions locked on our position." Miller made his decision. "Disengage docking clamps. Get us clear of the station." The massive ship shuddered as it pulled away from the Zentari facility. Alarms blared throughout the station as atmosphere vented from the damaged connection points. Admiral Vexcall watched with growing dread as the human vessel moved with surprising grace for its size. "Impossible," he muttered. "Our analysis showed its engines were primitive chemical propulsion." His weapons officer turned with wide eyes. "Sir, we're detecting energy buildup in what we thought were observation blisters. They appear to be weapon emplacements." On Relic's bridge, Moore's fingers danced across the tactical display. "Targeting solutions ready, Captain. Awaiting your command." Miller took a deep breath. This was supposed to be a recovery mission, not the restart of a war. But the Zentari had fired first. "Target their weapon systems only," he ordered. "Disable, don't destroy." "Acknowledged," Moore replied, programming the commands. Relic's pulse cannons fired, brilliant beams of concentrated energy striking the lead Zentari cruiser with surgical precision. The enemy ship's main gun exploded in a shower of molten metal, leaving the vessel intact but defanged. The remaining Zentari ships opened fire simultaneously. Relic's shields flared under the assault, energy cascading across the protective barrier in waves of light. "Shields at 64% and holding," Moore reported. "Their weapons aren't as effective as they should be. Something's absorbing the energy." Miller turned to Atlas's interface. Explanation. "Shield technology upgraded before decommissioning." The AI responded. "Frequency adaptive harmonics convert 37% of incoming energy to shield reinforcement." A smile spread across Miller's face. "So the more they hit us, the stronger our shields become," Moore finished in awe. Relic continued its counterattack, systematically disabling the weapons on 3 more Zentari vessels. With each successful hit, the crew's confidence grew. Captain Wright watched from her stealth vessel, recording everything. "This changes the balance of power completely," she whispered. The comm system suddenly activated. "Captain Wright, this is Miller. Mission parameters have evolved. Requesting instructions." Wright hesitated. Her orders hadn't covered this scenario. "Stand by, Miller." She opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Blackwood's face appeared, already aware of the situation through the quantum entanglement communicator. "The Zentari will call for reinforcements," Wright said. "Miller's team can't hold indefinitely." Blackwood's expression was grim but determined. "The Fifth Fleet is already moving to your position. ETA 6 hours. Commander Rodriguez is leading the advance force." "Sir, this could restart the war." "The Zentari restarted it when they stole our ship and fired on our personnel," Blackwood replied firmly. Hold position until reinforcements arrive. Wright returned to Miller's channel. Captain Miller, help is coming. You are authorized to take all necessary measures to defend Relic until relief arrives. On Relic's bridge, Miller acknowledged the order, then turned to his crew. You heard the captain. Let's show the Zentari what this museum piece can really do. As if responding to his words, Relic's main weapon array powered up, bathing the bridge in blue light. The ancient warship turned to face the remaining Zentari vessels, its hull gleaming as dormant systems continued awakening across its vast frame. The space around the Zentari station blazed with weapons fire as Relic danced between enemy ships with surprising agility. For a vessel its size, the ancient warship moved with the grace of a much smaller craft, evading concentrated fire while delivering precise counterattacks. Their reinforcements are arriving, Moore announced, tracking 3 new contacts appearing at the edge of the sensor range. Heavy cruiser class. Miller studied the tactical display, watching as the disabled Zentari vessels limped away from the battle zone. Despite their superior numbers, the aliens had underestimated Relic's capabilities. That mistake wouldn't be repeated with the new arrivals. Atlas, access historical battle records, Miller ordered. Any encounters with this cruiser class? Affirmative, the AI responded. Battle of Proxima Centauri, 2297. 3 vessels of identical configuration engage. Tactical data available. Miller nodded. Display combat patterns and recommend countermeasures. The main screen filled with schematics and battle simulations. Relic had faced these ships before, and won. Sir, Foster called from communications. I'm picking up transmissions from human frequencies. The Fifth Fleet is broadcasting their approach. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Reinforcements were coming, but still hours away. They needed to hold position until then. The lead Zentari cruiser launched a swarm of fighter craft, small, nimble vessels designed to overwhelm larger ships' defenses. Fighters incoming, Moore reported. Over 40 targets approaching from multiple vectors. Miller remained calm. Atlas, activate point defense grid. Autonomous tracking. Acknowledged. Across Relic's hull, hundreds of small turrets emerged from concealed ports. These defensive weapons had been specifically designed to counter fighter swarms, tracking each incoming vessel individually. They're targeting the civilian habitats, Daniel suddenly announced, pointing to a section of the tactical display where several unarmed research stations orbited a small moon. Miller's eyes narrowed. They're trying to split our focus. The Zentari strategy was clear. Force Relic to choose between defending itself or protecting innocent lives. Admiral Vexcall was counting on human compassion as a weakness to exploit. New course, Miller ordered. Position us between the cruisers and those habitats. The massive ship changed direction, its engines flaring as it accelerated toward the civilian stations. Around them, Zentari fighters began their attack runs, only to be picked off by Relic's automated defenses. On the Zentari flagship, Admiral Vexcall smiled coldly. The humans are predictable. They sacrifice tactical advantage for sentiment. His weapons officer nodded. All vessels concentrating fire on the human ship. The coordinated barrage struck Relic from multiple angles, hammering its shields with unprecedented force. Shields at 42%. Moore called out as the bridge shook, diverting power from non-essential systems. Miller gripped his chair as another impact rocked the ship. Hold position. We can't let them reach those civilians. Across human space, news of Relic's stand was spreading. Footage from Captain Wright's stealth vessel had been transmitted to Earth, where it now played on every screen. People watched in awe as the legendary warship, fought lost for generations, defended humanity once more. In the archives on Earth, Lieutenant Martinez stared at the live feed, hardly believing what she was seeing. It was never just a relic, she whispered. Back in the battle, Miller made a bold decision. Atlas, access classified weapons protocol Sierra 9. Warning, the AI responded. Sierra 9 protocol will drain 70% of remaining power reserves. Acknowledged. Execute. Deep within Relic's core, systems that had remained dormant even during the reactivation sequence began to power up. Energy conduits glowed with intensity as massive capacitors charged. What is Sierra 9? Moore asked, watching her console display readings she'd never seen before. Miller's expression was grim. Something Captain Russell developed for worst-case scenarios. The Zentari never found it because it's not part of the main weapons array. The ship began to vibrate as energy built up throughout its frame. On the tactical display, the 3 Zentari cruisers continued their approach, weapons firing continuously. Sierra 9 ready, Atlas announced. Miller looked at the civilian habitats behind them, filled with scientists and families who would have no defense against Zentari weapons. Then he gave the order. Fire. For a moment, Relic seemed to go dark as power drained from all systems into a single purpose. Then a wave of concentrated energy erupted from emitters spread across the hull, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. Admiral Karen Johnson stood on Relic's bridge, running her hand over a console that had been built before she was born. The ship hummed with steady power, its systems fully restored after the battle. Through the viewport, Earth glowed blue and beautiful, welcoming home its long-lost defender. Hard to believe it sat in Zentari space all these years. Just waiting, she said. Miller nodded. Atlas kept it functioning at minimal levels. The ship was designed to endure long periods of dormancy. And now it's changed everything. Johnson turned to face him. The Zentari have withdrawn their diplomatic corps. They're demanding talks at the highest level. The aftermath of Relic's reactivation had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The balance of power, long tilted in favor of the Zentari Imperium, had suddenly shifted. Human technology, dismissed as primitive and outdated, had proven devastatingly effective against the most advanced alien vessels. What happens to Relic now? Miller asked. The past week had been a blur of debriefings and ceremonies, but no one had told him the ship's fate. Johnson smiled. That's why I'm here. The Defense Council has voted unanimously. Relic will be fully restored and recommissioned as the flagship of Earth's new defense fleet. The news spread quickly through the ship, where repair crews had been working around the clock. In engineering, Moore and Foster embraced at hearing the announcement over the comms. And they want you to remain as captain, Johnson continued. At least until we can organize a proper command structure. Miller looked surprised. Me? I was only acting captain under emergency protocols, and you handled that responsibility admirably. She handed him an official datapad. The field promotion has been made permanent. Congratulations, Captain Miller. Later that day, as Earth's orbital stations glowed with lights in celebration, a solemn ceremony took place in Relic's main hangar bay. The space had been transformed, with Earth's flag prominently displayed and rows of seats filled with dignitaries and military personnel. Miller stood at attention as Admiral Blackwood addressed the gathering. 75 years ago, Captain Trent Russell and his crew made the ultimate sacrifice, ensuring that this ship would not fall into enemy hands. They activated protocols that kept Relic dormant but alive, preserving it for future generations. Blackwood gestured to a memorial wall where the names of Russell's original crew had been inscribed. Today, we honor their foresight and courage. Because of them, humanity stands tall once more. After the ceremony, a reception allowed the various captains and admirals to mingle. Miller found himself approached by a Zentari diplomat, one of the few who had remained on Earth. Captain Miller, the alien said with formal politeness, "My government extends greetings." Miller nodded cautiously. "And mine to yours. There has been much discussion about the misunderstanding regarding your vessel." The diplomat chose his words carefully. "My leaders wish to express that had they known Relic's true significance, they would have treated it with more respect." "It wasn't just a relic," Miller replied evenly. "It never was." Indeed. The diplomat's scales shifted color slightly. a sign of discomfort among his species. We have perhaps been too quick to dismiss human technology as primitive. This has been educational. As the diplomat moved away, Lieutenant Martinez approached, still slightly starstruck at being invited to such a prestigious event. "Captain Miller, I just wanted to say thank you. If I hadn't found that signal." Miller smiled warmly. "Then someone else would have, eventually." Relic was patient. It waited 3/4 of a century for the right moment. They both looked up as the lights dimmed slightly. Above them, through the transparent ceiling of the hangar bay, Relic's exterior illuminated. The ship glowed against the backdrop of stars, its hull freshly painted with Earth's emblem. "What happens now?" Martins asked. Miller considered the question. The Zentari had called for peace talks. Other alien species who had previously aligned with the Imperium were now seeking separate treaties with Earth. Humanity's position had transformed overnight. "Now we rebuild. We learn from the past rather than just preserving it." He touched the captain's insignia newly affixed to his uniform. "And we remember that sometimes the most powerful things are those others dismiss as relics." Throughout the ship, systems hummed with renewed purpose. In the AI core, Atlas processed information at full capacity for the first time in decades. And in the stars beyond, word spread of the ancient human warship that had awakened from its long slumber, changing the course of galactic politics in a single day. The Relic had become a legend once more.